Hello, welcome back to What Problem Are You Solving? The least complex and most adaptive podcast that you had all week.
Geez.
We keep it simple, but we're always flexible. Let's make it happen, baby. Ty,
right.
Adam, welcome back. Happy Monday.
Gents.
Let's do this thing. Ty, what
All
problem
right.
are you solving this week?
Actually, it's a good one. My fraternity is having its national convention this week. 7,000 men of the oldest historically African American fraternity in the country, Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, is hosting its national convention in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and I get to take my youngest son, who also pledged my fraternity last fall. So it's his first, my second, 18 years apart. So kind of cool. So it's not a bad problem. It's a good problem.
It's a good feeling.
So,
yeah, it's good.
Yeah. Good problem. What do I do to have him have fun and keep myself out of trouble?
Creating memories. That's awesome.
Absolutely.
Are you going to do that
with me? How about you?
Are you going to do the same dance you did at Good Soil?
No. This is completely different. We introduced at Good Soil. We introduced Adam to what's called a surf swag. And it's a song that goes like this, and you start slow, and then you pick it up, and everybody in the entire audience is just doing a surf swag to this song. And Adam was like, what in the world is going on? As a matter of fact, he said, this is the best party I've ever been to. I've never been to a conference like this.
Well, that part is true. And then where was the boogie that one time?
I have no idea. All I know is we were partying. We had fun. We had a blast.
But where and what part of the body was the boogie?
Oh, there's some inside joke.
Yeah, we partied. Yeah, we partied a lot. I don't know what happened.
It's all right. We're behind schedule. I'll post it in the chat.
All right.
Cool.
Eddie Murphy song. Now you know what I'm talking about.
Eddie Murphy song. Jesus.
All right. Never mind.
No, oh my God.
John's not gonna like the. This might get flagged, but let's see.
Oh,
John, let's put it this way. We had a.
I'm pot committed, so I had to.
We had a blast.
Nice.
How about you, John? What problem are you solving?
This week. So I got over the hump last week of the strategy sessions. That was fun. I got a few of those workshops knocked out. Got a few more lined up, so that's good. This week is really coming up for air, man, because when it ebbs and flows, man, all the things happen all at once. So finding space, that's my problem this week, right? Just to absorb, reset, react, instead of just taking care of the tyranny of the urgent, addressing those things that are important but not urgent. That's my focus for this week.
Important, not urgent. I like that.
Yeah. It's like all the things like, learning, exercise, focus, there's things that you're going to do when you have time. Well, now I got time. No excuses. Adam, how about you? What problem are you solving this week?
Oh, great. I have two. One will be very short. One is more nostalgia. So Rivian charging stations. I want to get someone on we went on a delightful camping trip this weekend, fully electric, to the Upper Peninsula of Michigan.
Nice.
I want to get someone from Rivian on, not to talk about EVs, but the business model. I think the car itself, very, very interesting, but the charging experience, I think there's some interesting stuff. I don't want to solve that problem, but I want to hear how they're solving it. So I'll go quick and punt it to them so that I can come up with my second one.
I like it.
Okay.
So does that mean you have a Rivian? Does that mean you have a Rivian?
No, I was a guest. I don't want everyone to start.
Was it 3 Corvettes you had?
Yeah, exactly. I'm in my pool house right now. That's why it's so quiet and the Wi-Fi is a little shaky. I'm in the wine cellar, so it's No, I was a guest, guys. Come on.
Okay, let's
Just
move on to
asking.
your next problem you're solving then.
Wasn't even
So
thinking.
many
I
problems.
wasn't thinking about broad. I was talking about like EV cry and the camping. I guess but I was a guest. So thank you to my host.
Where to land my private jet? That's the problem I'm having this week.
Really stepped into that one. Okay, listen. Now I have
How much to pay my chauffeur? That's really the problem. First world problem that Mr. Adam over here is
That's
having.
right.
we're trying to solve
Jeez.
an energy problem, guys. Come
How
on.
much Perrier fits in my swimming pool?
In the front trunk or the back trunk, all right?
All right, Adam.
I'm sorry,
save
Adam.
yourself.
We just had to dig at you a little bit. That's it. Go ahead.
Sugar, honey, and iced tea.
That's right. It's all good.
All right. So I'm going back to trading places. Lobster, crack crab. I'll post it. All right. Can't we have both? The problem that I am actually solving with a spreadsheet open, and it's not a customer discovery 10 years in the making, it's the other problem, but now it's getting more and more specific, more and more actionable with this last attempt, but hopefully this is the one with this contest. David had map, extract, and test, right? That was the new way he was framing the risky assumption test. Extract, map, and test. So working in reverse, I think the ecosystem and the support network, the charging stations of the world have done a good job of testing, right? Like the book does a good job, his book does a good job. Coaches like us, once we know, okay, fine, we've done all the work. This is how you might test that. You get currency, you run an experiment. You don't have to build the whole thing. I think people have done a decent job at that. I think he has done a good job of mapping and using the matrix. Once you finally articulate something critical, I wanted to give Rutical not only a shout out, but I also want to close the loop and get them on the show on a Thursday morning. That works for us. I'm going on the record with that next week, not just David Bland, but next week, Rutical, the whole team. I want to get some of them on. So I think this scale of critical versus not critical, like just like you were talking about, is it important versus,
Urgent or
urgent?
important.
I think it becomes fairly easy to start mapping, not just on a scale of 1 to 10, but in relation to some other thing on a matrix. So you might not know if it's a 1 or a 10, but if it's more critical than that thing, more known or less known than that thing. So I do think, again, extract, map, and I know I'm going along, but this is what we should be talking about anyway. So I'm taking some liberties. So again, testing, once you have it, I think we're good, and mentors are doing a decent job, and coaches and blah, blah, blah. Mapping, I also think, but the punchline here, and Kavita, I tagged her because, I was talking about her with her this morning. Nobody can extract still, which is if you can't extract, it is the risky assumption of risky assumptions, because without extracting them, I'm staring at all of these entries, all due respect to the people that we're going to host. So now I'm realizing I put my foot in my mouth twice tonight. But we knew that. We knew we wanted to help them. And so that was the reason for this contest. But I think the programs have let us down. Like if you don't have David Bland as your personal coach, all these accelerators, all these programs, if you ask someone for a single assumption, they still give you their entire product. Like with a generic like my customers and users will, use the product and engage.
Right. Yeah, that's not a good assumption.
And so, yeah, they're still compound. They're still non-specific. Customer's not specific.
Yep.
They're compound. Both the user is compound and the action is compound.
Exactly.
We'll join and engage. And I know this for the non. It's going to sound super salty, but that's why we're running this competition, and I think it should turn into a curriculum. I know David's doing his best to onboard people as well, but I was trying to figure out what I was frustrated at, because Kavita also did a great job of we're helping them, that we knew they wouldn't be perfect, but I don't know. I think I'm frustrated at the startup programs that are not teaching. Like they're TAM, SAM, SOM, everyone knows what it is. People know how to pitch. They know their use of fun slides.
So
they know their team, should have the blah, blah, blah. But I don't know. I think still, I actually don't know. It's a great question. There's no feedback. I don't know. We're going to find out over the next couple of weeks. That's going to be my main focus.
That's interesting.
Well, also what's missing is same thing with what we talked about on our retro. They also can't answer what problem are you solving, but they're very related. Because there's no feasibility experiments that really need to be run. There could be, but for the most part, most of these early stage ecosystem level, I have an idea. Whether we say you need to test your whole business model or not, we're not running feasibility assumption testing, and we're not even really running viability. It's all desirability combined with a little bit of back of the napkin for Ash's stuff. Going back to the Fermi tests, I agree with. You do need to do some
sizing.
Some sizing exercise. But now I'm way off topic. But yes, even if you just say what's desirability assumptions based on a real human, one group, they can't do it without, even with, we have David's videos, we have some of Brant Cooper's old stuff, and even if you give Mad Libs or if you make them fill out a form,
it's still hard to do.
It's hard. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a tough problem. So if you could solve that in the next 3 weeks, that'd be great. Come back. We'll knock it out.
I think we can
trademark
solve
it, copyright it.
We are going to solve it one way or another, but I still don't know if we can scale it. It's still going to take. We can solve it one at a time. I just don't know why. Not to throw Icor in. Icor hasn't really solved the what problem are you solving problem, with all due respect, and they've solved some commercialization problems. Good for them, but yes, this has not been solved at scale.
Chew on that.
People should be coming out of these programs knowing when we ask that question how to answer it. Okay.
Fair enough. Awesome. Well, good luck.
Extra primo good, Mr. Coleman.
You're just throwing all the quotes out tonight.
Sure.
Let's see. Okay, so thank you. Next topic on the agenda is complex adaptive systems. So this is something that I've been thinking about for quite a while. I had a minor epiphany when I was doing program management in the government, and I noticed that they teach a very linear, do this step and that step and this step and that step, and then at the end it's going to be successful, right? And we all know that that's doomed for failure nowadays. And I couldn't figure out a way to translate it to why. Why this linear thinking often produces bad results. In fact, one study that you could pull basically says that for upfront planning of projects of less than $15 million, your chance of success of meeting cost, schedule, and performance based on what you guessed, your estimate is you are about 6% chance of meeting those targets. So you have a 94% chance of failing in one or more of those variables. As one of my coworkers once said, if someone said you have a 94% chance of crashing in this airplane, would you get on the airplane? Probably not. But yet we do it all the time for linear, predictive project management, especially.
Well, there's no consequence of failing. So like, I'll throw the same question back at you, like at some of the corporate, and there was almost incentives to fail. Like not only were there not penalties, there's almost incentives to fail. So
You're not wrong.
Push back on them. I know.
You're never right, but you are not wrong.
Never.
All right. So the alternative, when you have feedback loops and when you have other nonlinear types of systems, when you think about these in terms of being complex and adaptive. So let's go to the definition space for a bit so we can break these words down, get some examples, and then try to think about how do we approach them differently from a lean, agile, lean startup, experimentation mindset instead of this linear, plan it all up front mindset, right? So complex adaptive systems. So what that basically means, it is a system is just a combination of things that produce some output together. And what makes it complex is when you have lots of different pieces that dynamically interact with each other. Okay, so think of things like the telephone network, right? Or a car.
So when we were writing I'll plug the book for a second because we learned a lot about this from Brad Feld. So I have the ChatGPT window open with his stuff. But whenever Paolo and I would go back to this, it was always like, how do you define it? It's like, you can't do anything with just the engine or just the door,
right,
or just the windshield, but when you put them all together, you get the outcome. So you can drive somewhere.
Yeah. It's complex. They all interact. Mm-hmm.
Those things together are the only way that they're valuable, which is instantly recognized. So the car to me was where we ended up. I was like, okay. But what's interesting, the second you start applying that back to like a innovation or a startup ecosystem, like a rainforest doesn't have an outcome, right? Like a car does. The individual, it's like almost the opposite. Like the individual pieces do.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And so in that case, like the engine does have, or the mushroom does have a function. Like it's not the forest I guess, could you make an argument that it's to support life and not die,
Well, so you're getting to the second half of the equation. So this is the adaptive part. So you can have a complex system that functions on its own. It's like a wholly contained system. The pieces talk to each other. They perform their functions, but they talk to each other, which is fine. That's what makes it complex. What makes it adaptive is when those pieces now act with self-interest, right? They learn from something else and then can make a different decision based off that. Maybe through a choice, maybe through Bayesian analysis, maybe through through learning, through grouping. And so now you can have unpredictable outputs from this complex adaptive system. You can't plan it all up front, literally by definition, because the actors inside of it are going to make choices that are not easily documented, modeled, whatever.
Say more about that, because I want to push back on that.
Sure.
Okay. So your known unknown goes to zero, is like being dragged with each refresh. Instead of piling up the learnings, with each adaptation, your learning is, or your scale of learning 1 to 10 is being pulled to zero.
So, another way to think of it, so this whole multiverse, right? Where there's one environment where John did not decide to do the What Pays podcast, and there's the reality where John did decide to do the What Pays podcast. Now, complicate that for every decision John has made in his entire life. You now have billions of John Ruarks that have all made different choices. And so being able to quantify the billion John Ruarks becomes economically impossible, right? You'd have to throw lots of GPUs at this thing, right, to calculate all the choices that John can make. So there are ways to model it by setting some constraints on your actors and all that. But in general, When you have a true adaptive system, now you actually have to step back. Instead of trying to control each piece, now you try to observe and give them guidelines. Well, we'll talk about that and what that looks like in the future.
So it's interesting. I spent probably good of my 3 years in graduate school, my master's program, tried the PhD, didn't work for a whole bunch of reasons. But I was interested in actually complexity theory as a way to understand leadership. The emergence. So emergence is a part of adaptation, right? I want to make sure I write this
Absolutely.
down.
Yep.
So emergence is a part of that. And emergence is built inside of uncertainty. It is by definition something that happens as a result of interactions between interdependent agents. And so I'm wondering when there's the reason why I want to push back is I want to get some clarity and pushback. My pushback to you guys is just clarity, for clarity's sake. Is this there? I think what I was reacting to, it felt like there was an independent actor conversation that you were positioning in terms of these complex adaptive systems. Um, One of my colleagues is doing some studying. He's doing a lot of research. Is a psychoanalyst by trade, and he's gotten into mycelial networks. And if you're familiar with mycelial networks, it's mushroom, right? It's how mushrooms communicate. They communicate underground. They are interdependent actors. Interdependent, not independent, not dependent, interdependent. um, which is yes, that is what you did, John. So they are interdependent by nature. That they communicate in a way that one part is instantaneously connected and adapting to another part's response to an environmental stimulus. And so I am. Uh, I'm curious about this one for one particular reason. I don't know, and I want to have him on the show one time. And he said he'd come on. Do you know David Bray? You remember David, John?
I do.
David
Mm-hmm.
Bray. I guess you remember him, Adam. Super smart guy, and he's been doing a lot of writing around artificial intelligence and the emergence and artificial intelligence as a complex adaptive system, and the humans' interaction in complex adaptive environments, particularly when we talk about AI moving from sophisticated Google to our independent agentic agents that can make decisions based on some constraints, and that they're adapting their behavior based on the inputs from the human. And so this complex, yes, I love the way you broke it down. Complex, yes. Adaptive, yes. System. And so the constituent parts themselves are complicated. They're weird in whatever way. To your point, billions of opportunity depend on initial sets of conditions. Adaptive, in that they are a response to the neighbor's reaction to whatever they're doing. So they're adapting all the time, and
Mm-hmm.
systemically they are part of that network. And
Right.
so, at what point do these systems disappear and reappear in their adaptation? And so, if we pull it back to what we're doing, what we do every day on every Monday, business models have what they say. Business models have the life shelf of yogurt. Are business models themselves complex adaptive responses to systemic inputs?
Not necessarily. And so here's
That was a
why.
mouthful, by the way, and I recognize
No,
that.
I like
Sorry.
it. No, it's a good question, because why did it work before there were complex adaptive systems? Why did linear project management or control work? And that's the loaded term, is that if you are able to control all the independent pieces and only let them have specific outputs, then it's very easy to just draw the line and see how all these things work together. Um, so as an agilist, right, I'm not a fan of waterfall linear thinking. Just get all the requirements up front, get all the design up front, and then just build it and it'll work, right? It only works when the customer doesn't change, the requirements or the needs don't change, and the technology doesn't change. So if you can guarantee that for this customer, for these requirements and the technology, I can knock that out, boom, go linear, go plan it all out. But if any of those variables are going to change in the near future, you need a different management structure to build whatever you're building.
So I'm gonna kick rocks a little bit and say that's a very
Please.
Western. It's a very Western way of managing the world.
Hmm.
It's a very Western way of managing the world. I will
Absolutely.
control all the inputs, therefore
Absolutely.
I control all the
It's
outputs.
a planning fallacy. You're 100% correct. Hmm.
And so in non-Western, more adaptive Eastern
Hmm.
ways of thinking about the world where you cannot control all the variables, and as a matter of fact, I think we're saying the same thing, that you are delusional. I mean, the Buddhists talk about suffering as the need to control your world, and that when you try to control
Have a
everything, that's when
desire
you
to
suffer.
change it all.
Exactly, and you will do whatever you need to do to hold on to it so it does not change. And so, going back to my question about business, in a world where the accelerant of AI, and I do believe it's an accelerant,
100%.
do we continue to see the world as linear and controllable, or do we lead into the complex adaptive and understand what it might mean, and what it might mean? To that end, on the way in, I was downstairs looking, and I bought this book
Oh, nice.
literally in 2011, January 31 of 2011, at they don't even exist anymore. Borders Books and Music, for $11.37, called Butterfly Economics by Paul Ormerdo, Ormerod, Omerod, excuse me, Omerod, A New General Theory of Social and Economic Behavior. And so on the back, he says, using examples various why there's always one toy every Christmas season that everybody wants, while others go begging. Why big budget acclaimed movies flop at the box office while other low budget counterparts become huge hits. That it does not make sense. And I
Right.
think that's the part that complex adaptive systems
Yes.
force on us, is that it does not make sense. To your point,
Yeah.
Adam, at the very beginning, why aren't these pitch competitions? They don't make sense. Even though they're trying to do what they're supposed to be doing, they
Right.
don't work because we're
Hmm.
trying to control too many things. And we're not adapting to all the inputs and saying, okay, so no, understand what it means. I'm done.
You're adding chaos theory into it as well, which is fantastic.
That's exactly. That was going to be my master's. That was going to be my the basis of my dissertation. Is chaos theory in leadership.
Hmm.
Literally, that was going to be the basis.
So complex adaptive systems could be things like customer markets, right? Because they respond to different things over the time frame and they change. Uh, the human nervous system, your brain, will grow and evolve and turn off different neurons. Um, Human organizations, they are complex and they adapt, right? Um, so yeah, there's a whole bunch of different examples of where things are not wholly predictable up front.
And they stop working when those systems stop working when we try to control
Exactly.
complexity.
I mean, yeah, the first thought came to mind too
Paradoxic.
was disruption of any kind, right? So, just a horrible metaphor, right? The hornet's nest is working just fine until it gets poked with a stick, and then all of a sudden, you get a lot of reaction, and so that stick could be control, that stick could be disruption, that stick could be budget cuts, that stick could be new technology, you know. So there's lots of different things that could disrupt the harmony of these complex adaptive systems, which now leads to the next part, because if there's disharmony, if there's unpredictability, then I just threw out that there implies some sort of harmony. What you will find with these independent actors that can make their own choices, over time, they will start to settle into some norms. There will be emergent patterns. There
Mm-hmm.
will be yeah, groupings of like behaviors. And it's fascinating because all of this happens on its own. Often with unintended consequences. That just because it's unintended doesn't mean it's bad necessarily, but it does mean that it is not what I had predicted up front. So, you could think about like the COVID-19 pandemic, right? So, a lot of the policies were trying to promote one behavior, and then other people were reacting with different behaviors, for example, right? So, the intended consequence was we want people to not go to their house of worship for so that way they don't spread things. But then people are like, well, you're not going to. But I'm a First Amendment. I want to have my right to worship. So I'm going to double down. And I'm going to go every Sunday now, right? So those kind of things, um, because the actors are independent, can actually have unintended consequences.
So
So, go ahead.
I cheated with ChatGPT, but the
Me too.
Freakonomics Cobra effect. I knew it
The
wasn't.
Cobra effect.
It wasn't perverse incentives, which I knew was just the generic term, but the Cobra effect. I remember when I read that for the first time, about how a bounty on something not only did it not, and it made so much sense. And like, not only did it not minimize the population by hunting them down, but people, of course, were breeding them to just turn them in and for the bounty. I mean, it's so obvious. I think it's a little off topic, but you gave me an opening when I forgot what you said.
I'm fascinated with unintended consequences.
Or another one is, Ty, I do think the East gets on en masse more things right than, but the who killed all the sparrows because they were eating the rice or something. I think it was like,
I've heard the story before. Yeah, I know you'll find it.
So as he's looking it up, one of the things that I couldn't remember, because again, I'm glad we're doing this, but it's been a while. It's been well over 20 years since I've really immersed myself in this stuff. And by the way, those that are online, there's a couple of people that you could really, if you want to think about it in terms of business. One is Diane Zohar, who wrote a lot of stuff about quantum organizations. And the other one is Meg Wheatley, who talks a lot about this kind of disequilibrium kind of stuff, chaotic systems and complex systems. But the thought that it drove me, and I'm without forcefully bringing it back to what we talk about here, is emergence and disequilibrium. Systems in equilibrium are stuck. They are solid state. They are balanced. But don't introduce too many fish into the pond, because then the fish eat the tadpoles, and it throws the system into disequilibrium,
Right.
which forces it to roll over and have another emergent property.
Right.
So in startup world, AI is a disequilibrium, right? It's adding to the disequilibrium of a system. John, you talked about how did systems kind of maintain the way they were, and because they were intended to have equilibrium. Bureaucracies are intended to maintain equilibrium
through control and reinforcement. Absolutely.
Exactly. Reinforcing cycles, but don't let anything turn that so you have some disequilibrium. And again, I use a little ChatGPT so I can remember, but that disequilibrium throws the system either left or right, but those are energetic. Otherwise, entropy sets in. And when entropy, so what's second law of thermodynamics? You're the engineer of the three of us. Second law of thermodynamics
is sounds
entropy.
Good.
There you go. It'll start to decay after a while, because now you have no more energy inputs. And so, can we purposefully introduce this equilibrium into businesses? So you end up pushing the system into some complex and emergence. So something happens. So you kind of push it, you instigate it into even bigger things. But you also have to be careful, because if it goes too far, then you end up with a different kind of decay. So that's why they talk about not disequilibrium, but near disequilibrium. So you push it enough so you get it to do something else.
So two thoughts come to mind there. There's disruption in the sense of like taking something out so new equilibrium is found, and then there's the nudge that gets people out of equilibrium so that they become better versions of whatever they product service they create. Right. So I'm thinking like just rough example, if you're on a high functioning team and someone's out sick for the day, the team can adjust and cover for that person, right? And so the work gets done and the work normalizes, and that disruption has been re-equalized, even if temporarily. But I like where you're going is it possible and even permitted to nudge the system out of whack? You ever see these videos of all these new robots being built, and you see the guys that work there just beating on them with baseball bats and pushing them down? Like, I don't want that job. I don't want them coming after me. But having enough to force it to make new decisions for a better intended consequence.
So
it's a good question.
Before I keep going, and remember both where you are, but the opposite tie to make the system stronger. It also exposed, there's a way of doing this. I remember when that one guy like took down Barings Bank or something. And so now with the financial, a lot of my friends in finance, the guys with the Rivians, see what I did there? Full circle. They are forced out of equilibrium. They're forced to take off for 2 weeks. Right? Because if they were running some random scheme, or they were stealing, or they were doing, like, if you're just completely removed from the system, the bank would know. So it's sort of like what you're talking about. Let me go back to my ChatGPT.
Or maybe Google 20% time. Right? It's
different. It's different. One is like sort of working on, like, one is sort of for good versus the other one is for evil. One is to innovate and get stronger and like force yourself to adapt better, and one is like to catch something or to negatively. They're similar. I gotta play with this for a second.
Have you heard of Netflix's Chaos Monkeys?
So I have. You introduced them. Please go.
Yeah, the networks. They were trying to build resiliency into their networks, so there was enough redundancy and then failover modes. And the only way they could truly test it was to insert a system, a subroutine that says, I'm randomly going to shut down 10% of your servers, and you won't know when or which one. So go. And then only due to the introduction of this Chaos Monkey did it actually make the network stronger, more resilient by design, because they designed chaos into the system. It's fascinating.
Can that have unintended? Can that have a Cobra effect?
Oh, of course. What would the Cobra effect be of that? So the incentive is to now overly harden your system, right, or make it so then it comes with cost and resources, etc. Right? That's the immediate one that comes to mind. Mm-hmm. And hope.
So how can we? Because this is fascinating to me, just as we're talking about it. Because I haven't thought about this stuff in a very long time. How do you take some of this science of emergence, science of systems dynamics, science of chaos, to help people understand? Maybe not. I'm going to use a little sport analogy. Not where the puck is, but where the puck is going to be. Skating where the puck is going to be. Wayne Gretzky, the anticipation. I mean, he could not, to your point, his where the puck was going to be is multiverse, right? Yeah. It was his assumption based on experience that it was going to be there. He could see patterns of behavior. Maybe what you're talking about, Adam, and getting people to start thinking about, maybe we're all talking about what problem you're solving is not, and I've been thinking a lot about this since last week, which was, how do you know when there's a problem? Where's that spike in something that goes, I'm on it, versus the valley, the whatever, this is the sine wave, whatever that valley in the sine wave, it goes below and you're like, we can solve that because that's a symptom of the spike of whatever's happening. So how could you use this complex adaptive environment to get people to unpack current problems, unpack maybe near problems, and then maybe create some understanding of what, if I threw a chaos monkey in here, what might be, and how could I solve this problem without creating other cascading problems and associated problems.
I mean, the interesting thing is you still have to go back, and this is why John, you sort of got me on the adaptive piece, and that's why the engine is different than the mushroom. But there's still a scenario where there is no goal.
Sure.
Of the system.
Or the goal might be generic.
Or no one's designing. So you could argue that no one's designing. So there is a goal or there's an outcome.
Yeah.
But not one person or entity is designing for that outcome. So no one's in charge of it.
So here's why I chose this cover art. What's this cover art?
Go on.
We got a roller skating rink.
Yeah.
Right. So the goal is to have enough capacity that people can have a good time. In general, the general rules are, you go in a counterclockwise motion. After that, if you try to imply or impose any other controls, the system's going to break down, right? People are going to naturally emerge order out of this chaos. And if you try to control every single actor and say, okay, you're supposed to go 2 miles per hour and stay on the inside lane, and you're supposed to go 3 miles per hour and stay on the outside, there's too many moving parts. And what happens when someone trips and falls right in front of another skater, right? So we found that emerging systems, like Ty was alluding to, are ones where you give them the rough outlines. I mean, it's just like when you prompt an AI, you give them the rough outline of what you want, and then say, all right, go figure it out. And you let the actors do that. But if you were to spend time and resources to try to plan this perfectly to make sure that everybody is safe and going in the right direction and not interacting with each other, then it's a losing battle.
Have you ever heard about, and I'm sorry, I just want to, as you say that, have you ever heard about the traffic circles in Denmark, I believe, or somewhere they don't have any? Go ahead, Adam. Sorry.
That's literally where I was going. There's a video of traffic. I think it is in like Bangladesh I will look it up. I was going to ask ChatGPT, but yeah, I think there's no question that microman or trying to plan for but someone is still planning, right? It's still not an emergent, like, so, and I think you left that out. Brad includes like the emergent piece of this, and that to me is still a rainforest and like city. So Paolo and I also went back to just like there's town, there's sprawl, or there's planned communities, and then there's just emergent. But those are not good. They're actually, the planned ones in those cases are better. Like sprawl is a result of an emergent system that's sort of adapting locally.
Right.
That is a complex adapted. It's definitely it's adapting to the people moving in and what variables are there, and that is a bad instance of a complex emergent adaptive system, whereas a planned city, especially now with the knowledge that we have, and going back to walk, like almost using AI almost to that extreme, but not quite there, but understanding, walking what all needs to be there, and then planning that up front, in theory is well, not even in theory. It may not be as good as it could be, but it is better. There is almost a fact that
Right.
A planned city is better than urban sprawl. Like, I think you've got some YouTubers who will go on the record saying it is objectively better, and that urban sprawl is objectively bad. So yeah, so I'm keep going back to the emergent part versus, yes, there's no question in this discussion that the trying to overly constrain a system and not allowing for variables to change while it's going, that is a mistake. But just saying that everything should be this emergency, like someone still is designing, so like maybe they're
sure. So maybe it's a scale, right, of how much emergence do you want to allow,
and who's in control,
and who's control,
and who's collaborating. Like, are you aligned, right? Like, so is the mushroom and the tree, are they like, maybe they are, or maybe they just seem like they are because they need each other, and that just gets back to mutual.
I would like that, because you're talking to organizational dynamics. I'm thinking of, like, the BART model for adaptive systems, where in a highly bureaucratic organization, there's going to be variance, but you want to control it through policy and procedures, and try to get that as repeatable as possible. Where, unlike a startup, they're going to have high variability and low levels of control at first. I mean, just as basically H1 environments versus H3 environments, right? And so there's a spectrum of how much risk are you willing to take in the variability, and how much control do you want to take.
It's so fascinating to me, because there's parts of me that completely understands the bureaucratic systems that calcify with minimal variability, calcify the behaviors with minimal variability to make sure there's some sense of sustaining. I heard somebody say, if you aren't a conservative as you get older, you're stupid, or you're crazy, or something along that line. I think it was.
If you're not a bleeding heart liberal when you're young, then you have no heart. Exactly.
Right. I think it was Churchill, or somebody along that line may have said that. But there's another part of me that would suggest, and maybe it's cultural, that would suggest that there's no way that you can. There's no way to make. How do I say this? In a hyper technological world where we have access to lots and lots of information, I don't know how you create systems that are solid, that are so rigid that you'll be able to control everything. I don't.
And there's people that try every day. That's the hilarious part. A little lesser known fact about me. I used to be a gray hat hacker.
Oh.
So I used to do penetration testing, sometimes good, sometimes not so good, because even a well-formed system can be disrupted from the outside intentionally. So yeah, I see your point, because to us, it seems like a fallacy to plan the perfect system, but there's no such thing as a secure system. For example, we said the only secure system is one that you don't know about and is buried in 6 feet of concrete below the ground, right? That's the only secure system. And so that joke still kind of applies here in the only non-changing, not complex, not adaptive system is the one that doesn't exist. Because again, even industries that were relying on predictability, auto manufacturing, and the telegram wires, and all that you had planned, it was complex because you needed all the different nodes so everyone could call each other on the phone, but it was predictable. It was still able to be planned. I think those days are gone, and so we have to do a different type of thinking of how we approach planning, production, development, experimentation, which I guess is the great segue to like, so now what? What do we do with this? If we introduce this term of a complex adaptive systems, and we're going to accept it to be mostly true in 2025, how do you respond as a startup, as a entrepreneur, as a leader?
So you mentioned startup, entrepreneur, leader, or entrepreneur, leader. And I think those are
Mm-hmm.
three different conditions, right?
Absolutely.
Sensitivity to initial conditions. Um, my sense is that even though they are three different kinds of roles in today's society, if you aren't thinking like that, you might become inconsequential. So I just wrote on my piece of paper, the work
Amen.
that uh, Alex Osterwalder puts down, explore, exploit, right? And it's not. I think he usually sees it as a continuum. Explore, exploit. You're trying to figure out where you're at. But maybe what we're talking about in complex adaptive systems is explore, exploit, right? That is, it is circular in some ways.
I'm not sure. I think that exploit, when we talked about this earlier, you can make a bet that something's not going to, if you had a moat, even if I understand the idea of not controlling the customer, but you can make a bet that something might not change, that your customer, what were the three things? Your customer, your funding, the environment, the technology. Like, there are scenarios where it's not that because you're artificially controlling, and sometimes it is because you're artificially controlling it, especially in business. And so your moat might be unethical or might just be a monopoly or whatever the case may be. But there are windows of time. They may be short, but there are predictable windows of time where you were literally extracting until you're done. Like, you kind of have a model where for some amount of time, and this goes to the green room piece, which we don't hide we have no secrets here on the What Pays podcast, but I think I partially agree with you, but I think it's just you got to make sure you're exploring, because I don't think that there is a time horizon in explore. Like, you're basically finding a slice of time, and you're right or wrong about those assumptions or that exploration, and then you have to keep exploring those single points in time until you get to an exploit, and then you exploit it for as long
As long as you can, and as long as the
holds
market will hold
on.
on to it.
And
Yeah.
then, so then to me, it's more the I think it's Guy Kawasaki. To me, that's one of the best slides I've ever seen on this, where it's like the S curve and like the ice. Let me see if ChatGPT will find that. I know I jumped all over the place on this answer, but yes, I think you can exploit things. I think you can control them or predict certain variables are going to stay relatively the same. I think the problem is when, yes, we're sort of saying the same thing. You have to always be exploring on the side. I think exploration is not so much of a complex adaptive. I think that's more of a binary. It's neither complex nor adaptive. It's more of like searching, testing assumption. Like, that's just testing assumption. You're either right or wrong, and I guess you're adapting your assumptions, but it's not. But it's not really
So let me try this. So this is what I asked ChatGPT to help me think through: calcification and entropy, and it labels it as a paradox. And so as I'm doing explore, and then I get to exploit, right? Explore, exploit, low uncertainty. At that point, I have low information uncertainty. I have a high level of control on my outputs and environment.
Right.
What happens? I no longer have information inputs, which creates, as it would say, increased systemic entropy, because you stop adapting to externals, because the assumption that once you get to the exploit stage is I have it all figured out, right? What happens in organizations? Why did Kodak go out of business? Because they exploited the crap out of their out of their business model. They weren't even worried about any more informational inputs. It becomes number two, it becomes fragile in dynamic environments. All of a sudden, now you have digital technologies in photography, and it fails to process new information or innovate. This leads to a buildup of informational entropy.
Interesting.
Informational entropy. And so, what do we try to get every day? We come on here every Monday. How do you know? Who did you go and talk to? You didn't talk to
Right.
nobody. I just know. I'm certain. You have informational entropy. Your business,
Yes.
you're going to go out. We say this to people all the time. I've talked to a couple people this week. Oh, I know what I'm doing. No, you don't. You have no idea. You just created a bunch of stuff. And you're like, yeah, I know this will work. How? Where'd you get your information from? Because wait a minute, John. I used to be one of them. Oh
Ah,
you've now devolved into informational entropy, and when entropy enters the system, it dies. And the only way that you can continue to exercise due diligence to build your business is to continue to have information. Otherwise, you aren't adapting. You have no adaptation to new inputs. Nothing. Data beats disagreement. Go out and talk to somebody. Go out and get some information. If you're right, the data will tell you. I'm just saying.
yeah.
But it's not. Yes.
So you're always exploring at that point. As soon as you get to like, we got it. No, you don't.
The system for exploring is different than the product. The product is still planned.
Yes, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
And the business model is still somewhat planned, especially in exploit. It is planned and optimized to not have Cobra effect. It is optimized for
you're optimizing lots of things. Yeah, trying to reduce variability. Yeah,
we just spent an hour. Yeah, always explore and get and don't just make assumptions.
This was fascinating. This conversation, I thought, oh my God, we're good. And now we're 57 minutes into it already. Right? I am really convinced that this explore exploit is the cycle, because as soon as you get to, and we've said it, and people write about this, as soon as you get to that point, what's the next thing you need to be going? Do you need to be going back to H1 because you end up as a Kodak, or you end up as a Blockbuster, or Borders Books and Music, because you think you know it all. You've exploited the system as much as you can. Watch out.
Watch out.
Sorry. Adam said, all I can say is I can't stand the
Yeah, no, I think you were thinking about jumping to that next curve, like this Guy Kawasaki jumping the curve is...
Well, even just I put it in the comments, but I overloaded the comments today. It's the refrigerator, the harvesting blocks of ice, but his point was that none of those original ice harvesters became refrigerator companies. It's the same as the Kodak. It's the Kodak story. I mean, but yeah, but we're trying to control that, and it hasn't worked. That's an emergent thing with startups.
Yeah.
But who are we? Who is the we in that case? Like, it's the corporates are still trying. The incumbents are still trying to control that system, and they can't. Or ish.
Ty, you really got me thinking a lot about this. When is it appropriate to nudge a system into complex adaptive? Because I've been thinking too about the security example where we have things like red teams and blue teams. So by design, we pay our own people to say, you are now the bad guy, and you're going to tell me exactly how you get into my system. And we have a blue team that's the good guy, and that's going to keep them out of the system. And you're all going to compare notes at the end of the exercise. A little bit of anarchy is not bad in that case, right? You need some people to push the envelope, to push up against the red rules and the blue rules we've talked about. How you're reacting to that?
It's not anarchy. It's planned. It's just
planned anarchy. What?
Organized
So
chaos. Yeah, it's organized chaos. It's planned. Well, organized chaos is not the same as planned anarchy because I was looking for the meme. Organized chaos is sort of self-organized, which was back to what we were talking about. But planned anarchy, yeah, is the search is like
Could be.
so two examples. One is there's an example in I think who wrote Blink? What's the guy's name? I can't see his face. He wrote the book Blink.
Oh, Blink. Yeah.
Come on. So that's the first one, and you'll get
hmm
and once you pull it up,
Gladwell. Malcolm Gladwell.
Gladwell, Malcolm
Yeah.
Gladwell talks about the red team, blue team, and they have it was a war game exercise, a tabletop war game exercise, and the blue team was the good guys, and the red team was like some guy from the SEAL teams or some special operations team, and they went and had this conversation, and they tried to court martial this guy because he cheated, and hold on a second, and
Yeah.
he cheated because he was like, like
You
the
can't do
commander on
that.
the blue team was like, "You can't do that." He said, "That's not my job. My
That's
job
right.
is to literally figure out how the opposition force would do that." The other one is the guy who established the Dev Group, otherwise known as SEAL Team Six, Dick Marchenko. Dick Marchenko, his job, he was able to infiltrate. I think the story goes he was able to infiltrate a nuclear base. Right? It was like I know it was a nuclear base. The other one I think was like the White House or something, and he played by a different set of rules. He
Yes.
didn't follow the established exploit rules. He went and explored. That then caused the system to create exploit.
Right.
And so, if you're not in this explore, exploit, understand that you're always in a complex, adaptive environment, especially as you get more and more informational inputs, then you end up with informational entropy. And I'm glad I found that because I think I'm going to use that one a little bit more often because I've been thinking about it a while. But you end up with informational entropy. You just don't have enough information. Now your system is like, and then businesses do what? They start to we can't think anymore. We need to do budget cuts. What's the first thing we cut? People who think.
Yeah.
The HR people, the OT people, the people who help us figure out strategy. We cut them. They'll cut them quick. Cut them to the
Yeah.
quick because they can't take the informational entropy. I think the paradox is when you acknowledge informational entropy, you end up digging even more into informational entropy because you don't know what to do. You don't know what to find to get yourself out of it.
hmm
So instead of doubling down on getting more information, you pretend as if the information you have is the right information because that's what got you here. Goldsmith, what got you here ain't gonna get you there.
There you
I'm
go.
sorry.
I like it. All right, Adam, final thoughts on complex adaptive systems. Take it away.
we covered most of it. I will either yield my time or we can not attribute the person's name and go through an assumptions mapping exercise. All right, we'll do it later. Let's get someone. Do we want to start inviting people on for next week, or do we want to wait a couple weeks? I think we had a couple of people interested from last week. Do we want to start mentor Mondays, or do you want to wait 2 weeks?
Give me some time to think about it.
All right, so let me think about. All right, that's my there. There you go. I tried to get you to adapt. This podcast is an
I'm
adaptive.
trying to control you the whole time.
An adaptive system. There, I figured out a way to. That was not planned.
Adam,
All right,
Adam,
that
you
was
are my adaptive system, and I love you for it.
I would like a T-shirt that says, "All right, I somehow figured out a way to answer that question as it gets late." That was fun.
Nice, awesome. Ty, final thoughts.
Complex adaptive systems are complex for a reason.
Yeah. Yep.
I've dropped the ball on that one. Just drop the pen, bang.
Yeah.
How about you, John?
Cool. Again, this went lots of different ways, and that's why I always enjoy talking to both of you, is because you nudge me into different directions, and I I still find it fascinating. Again, I would tend to agree that in most industries, they're all complex adaptive systems. Just depends on how far you zoom in or zoom out. But it requires a different management structure. It requires different risk taking. It requires much more experimentation because your plans are only as good as it survives first contact with the first actor, right? So that's why this whole lean startup agile experimentation works, is because even in highly known environments, which you believe to be fairly stable, actors are going to act. They're going to work independently. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's all about getting data and experimenting. Adam?
Yeah, I can't resist. Yeah, so you said it, but I can't resist. Like the adaptation is not to the change; it's to your being wrong, right? Like so.
Yeah,
There's
that's a
both
good point.
sides. There's like legitimate adaptation to when the variables change, but then there's also the adaptation, which we call pivoting,
Yeah,
which is also a real time adaptation to just not being like the variable stays the same and you have to
correct.
change versus you having to change because the variable or the environment or the system is also independently adapted. So
Yeah.
I don't. Well, yeah, I
Well,
think that
I've seen with my own eyes a program manager get chewed out because their plan that they guessed 2 years ago was wrong, and they were told by their leadership that just means you didn't plan good enough. So you need to plan more next time. I heard it with my own ears, and it still stuck with me to this day.
Uh, so my last on this is thank you, Nick S. Uh, don't try to be right, get it right.
Try to get it right. It's a great way to end the episode. So thanks, gentlemen. See you next week.